Kelly Gissendaner's final hours. She thought she could outwit justice. Hello, friends. Tonight we turn to a story that shook Georgia and left a mark on the history of American justice. On September 30th, 2015, Kelly Gissendaner became the first woman executed in the state of Georgia in 70 years. But behind the prison gates, her story was far more complicated than headlines could capture. She was a wife, a mother, and a woman who chose betrayal over love, orchestrating the death of her husband for money and freedom. Yet in her final hours, she stood trembling in the execution chamber, singing Amazing Grace, apologizing with tears in her eyes, and leaving the world with haunting last words to her children. Was she a cold mastermind, or a broken woman searching for redemption at the very end? Stay with me, because this case will take you from a marriage torn apart to the quiet chamber of Georgia's death row. Dear friends, when we look into the case of Kelly Gissendaner, we see more than a simple crime. We see a life of contradictions, a woman who could speak tenderly to her children, yet mastermind a plan that would forever alter countless lives. To truly understand the weight of her last hours in Georgia's execution chamber, we must walk back through the chapters of her story, from a troubled beginning to the haunting end. Kelly's life before prison was chaotic, unstable, and often tangled in toxic relationships. She had 3 children by 3 different men and struggled to keep her marriage to Douglas Gissendaner alive. Douglas was patient, steady, and tried his best to hold the family together, even raising Kelly's children who were not biologically his. To many, he was the quiet hero. But while Douglas worked long hours to provide stability, Kelly was drifting. She fell into an affair with a younger man, Gregory Owen, whose rough edges and dangerous lifestyle seemed to excite her. For Kelly, leaving Douglas through divorce wasn't an option. Divorce meant splitting property, money, and perhaps even losing custody. In her mind, there was only one way to break free without sacrifice. Douglas had to be gone. What began as whispers and late-night phone calls soon turned into a detailed plan. Kelly pressed Greg relentlessly, telling him that if he truly loved her, he would help her. At first, Greg resisted, but over time, her persistence, promises, and manipulation wore him down. By February 1997, the plan was set in motion. On a freezing February night, Kelly drove Greg to the home she once shared with Douglas. She placed in his hands a steel baton and a hunting knife, tools for the unthinkable. Calmly, she drove off to create her alibi, spending the evening at bars with friends, laughing and drinking, while Greg hid inside the house, waiting. Hours passed before Douglas walked through the door. Exhausted from work, he had no idea danger was already inside. Greg forced him into the car and drove him out to the remote backroads of Gwinnett County. There, under the cover of darkness, Douglas was ordered to kneel in the woods. The attack that followed was brutal. Greg struck with the baton, then stabbed with the knife. Douglas tried to resist, tried to cry out, but the cold air swallowed the sound. Following Kelly's instructions, Greg staged the scene as a robbery, taking Douglas's wedding ring and watch before setting fire to his car. When Kelly returned and asked, "Is it done?" Greg nodded. Together they left the flames behind, as if they were leaving behind a chapter of Douglas's life. By sunrise, Kelly was already weaving her story. She called police, claiming Douglas had gone out to help a friend and never returned. At first, the explanation seemed possible, but Douglas wasn't a man who simply disappeared. The investigation quickly revealed cracks in Kelly's story. Detectives discovered Douglas's burned car in a wooded area. Suspicion grew, and it wasn't long before investigators linked Kelly to Greg Owen, a man she had never once mentioned. Phone records told the story. Dozens of late-night calls, secret meetings, and a clear connection to the night Douglas was killed. When confronted, Greg tried to lie, but his alibi fell apart, and soon he confessed. He pointed directly to Kelly as the mastermind, describing how she pressured him, planned the night, and gave the orders. When Kelly was arrested, she tried to claim she had been tricked, but phone calls from jail revealed a different side. Cold, calculating, even discussing ways to silence witnesses. Kelly was offered a plea deal, life in prison without parole, but she refused, believing she could outsmart the system. Greg, on the other hand, accepted the deal and testified against her. In court, prosecutors painted Kelly as manipulative and heartless, showing how she maintained a double life, smiling in family photos while plotting Douglas's death. Evidence piled high. Her letters, her lies, the life insurance policy she had secretly taken out, and Greg's chilling testimony. It took the jury just 5 hours. Guilty of orchestrating her husband's death. The sentence, death. Douglas's family wept in relief. To them, this was justice for the man who had loved and supported Kelly despite everything. For Kelly, it was the beginning of nearly 2 decades on death row. Unlike most condemned inmates, Kelly faced her sentence as the only woman on Georgia's death row. She was isolated, kept in a separate unit, and spent 18 years in that lonely space. Over time, she tried to change her image. She enrolled in theological courses, studied scripture, and even ministered to other inmates. Supporters claimed she had transformed into a woman of faith and redemption. Over 60,000 people signed petitions asking for her life to be spared. Even Pope Francis sent a personal letter urging clemency, but Douglas's family never forgave her. To them, she was still the woman who had plotted their loved one's death. Every court appeal failed, and in 2015, the date for her execution was set. On September 29, 2015, Kelly's last day began quietly. She was informed that her execution would proceed. Her 3 children came to see her, and they wept together, clinging to every final moment. Her last meal was simple but telling. Chips with cheese dip, Texas toast, cornbread, buttermilk pie, and a Sprite. She ate slowly, leaving much of it untouched. The weight of time had stolen her appetite. That night, she was led into the execution chamber. Guards strapped her to the gurney, her body trembling beneath a white sheet. Witnesses gathered behind the glass, family members, attorneys, reporters. She was asked if she had final words. Kelly's voice was steady, though tears streamed down her face. She apologized to Douglas's family, admitted her guilt, and told her children she loved them deeply. Then, with her voice breaking, she began to sing Amazing Grace. The hymn echoed through the sterile chamber, trembling but clear. Her children later said it was the most haunting yet beautiful sound they had ever heard. At 12:21 in the morning, the injection began to flow. Kelly's voice slowed, faded, and then fell silent. At 12:29 in the morning, she was pronounced dead. She was 47 years old, the first woman executed in Georgia in 70 years. As the clock struck past midnight and Kelly's voice faded into silence, Georgia closed a chapter it hadn't touched in 70 years, the execution of a woman. But even as the gurney was wheeled away, the story of Kelly Gissendaner left behind more than headlines. It raised questions about love twisted into obsession, about choices that can destroy not just one life but generations of lives, and about whether transformation behind bars can ever erase the past. For Douglas's family, her final words and hymns could never undo the loss of a son, brother, and father. For her children, the memory of their mother singing Amazing Grace in her last breath will forever echo as both pain and love. Dear friends, cases like this remind us that the choices we make ripple far beyond ourselves. If you want more real stories like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.